Good morning, everyone. We'll now convene the regular council meeting of November 29th, 2016. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Madam Clerk, could we have the roll call, please?
Acting Mayor Louie in the chair, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Deal. Not present. Councillor Jang. Here. Councillor Reimer. Here. Councillor Meggs. Here. Councillor Ball. Councillor Carr. Here. Councillor Affleck. Here. Councillor DeGenova. And Mayor Robertson has a leave of absence for civic business. Acting Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. First, we have condolences for one Douglas John McNicol. It's with great sadness that we inform you of the passing of Douglas John McNicol on November 18th, 2016. Doug served as a QP 1004 member and served as members for over 20 years, where he took a strong leadership role in collective bargaining and a number of significant arbitrations. He, of course, brought passion and energy and tenacity to the work of the union and was a leader and a mentor to many. Doug also served for 2 years as employment equity advisor with the City of Vancouver, and his life will be celebrated this Saturday, December the 13th, 2016, from 2 to 5 p.m. at the P&E Pacific Room. On behalf of Vancouver City Council, I offer my deepest and our deepest sympathies to Doug's family, friends, and colleagues. We have a number of in-camera items today, so Council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authorities under Vancouver Charter are listed in the updated agenda. Would somebody like to move the motion that we go in camera? Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Stevenson. All in favor? Any opposed? It passes unanimously. We have minutes to adopt. Minutes ones are the minutes of the regular council meeting of November the 15th. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, mover of the minutes? Moved and seconded. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Minutes 2 are the minutes of the public hearing of November the 15th. Are there any corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion. Moved by Councillor Ball, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Minutes 3 are the minutes of the regular council meeting following the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services meeting of November the 16th. Are there any corrections to those minutes? If not, a mover of the motion to adopt the minutes. Moved by Councillor Reimer, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Council will now consider the consent agenda items. We have 3 administrative reports and 1 other report on the agenda for consideration. Council may adopt the recommendations of these items collectively in a single motion. Does any member wish to hold any item? Councillor Affleck.
A3.
Councillor Affleck, A3. Okay. Seeing no other takers, would someone like to move the recommendations left on the consent? Moved by Councillor Stevenson, seconded by Councillor Reimer. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. The following items have been moved on consent. The first is the 2017 targeted 3-year land averaging program, notice to BC Assessment Authority. Second is approval of council initiatives, business improvement area renewals 2017. Okay. Oh, sorry. And the other report, street naming of street extension and new public street, U Street and Lab Avenue. Okay. We also have a motion which has a request to speak. A number of speakers have signed up for the item. Someone would like to move. Normally what we would do is have refer the item to hear speakers at next committee meeting. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. We have one piece of unfinished business, which is updates to green buildings policy for rezonings. Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Louie. I am prepared to move the recommendation, so if others had questions, I'm happy to sit down.
Okay. Are there any questions to the matter before?
Okay, seeing none, I am very pleased to be moving the recommendations for the updates to the green buildings policy for rezonings. A few things, because it's been a couple weeks since we've gone through this, just to remind folks that this is a rezoning policy, so it only applies to buildings that have yet to be built. It has no impact whatsoever on current buildings. It does, however, have an impact on all of us in so much that it will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, thermal energy, and total energy use. And establishing administrative requirements as intended in the zero emissions building plan, which I'm very happy to say all of council supported unanimously. So this policy simply allows new buildings built in the city to comply with the plan that we've already passed. I would note at a personal level, in relation to energy efficiency, I had the misfortune of being evicted earlier this year, as council has heard, and moved from a single family home, detached home that I was renting into a multi-unit residential building. Well, an unpleasant experience all around to be involuntarily have to move. One of the silver linings in that move has been my energy bill. I have gone from paying over $100 a month in energy use this time of year, I looked up last November, to actually paying $0 so far this year because I have yet to turn on my energy. As a result, my building is 2 years old. So it gives you an example of the kind of impact that energy efficient policies can have. This is agnostic to the kind of energy. I know that there is a debate about what kinds of energy we'll be using in the future. This policy is not about that, but simply about how much energy we'll be using in the future. Also note that CBC just this past weekend had a wonderful article about a new building, social housing building built in Ottawa under very similar requirements to this, where the residents will be paying $27 a year in energy costs, which I think is something that all of us would like to look forward to into the future. So I'm pleased to see this coming forward. I think it's a big step forward for energy efficiency, but also a big step forward for our residents who, you know, as much as it's fun to pay utility bills, it's also fun to pay a little bit less on our utility bills when we're moving forward. So I'm pleased to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Next, we have Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I had a question for staff. Actually, I couldn't get on the queue. I was trying to do so before Councillor Reimer had moved the motion.
That's fine. Well, so I'm assuming, Councillor Carr, your computer is up and running, is it? Okay. And you have questions as well? No. Okay. All right, Councillor, any other questions besides Councillor DiGenova at this? Seeing none, then Councillor DiGenova, questions, and then we'll back to debate.
Thank you very much. I did have some questions specifically regarding some of the implications. I mean, today in the bylaws that we see, we're already looking at increased fees on gas fitting, on the electrical bylaw. It doesn't specifically state that this is for updates to the green building policies for rezoning, but I'm wondering if you can tell me what the increased fees for certain permits may be. Moving forward, I understand that council did increase rezoning fees in general 30% last year, so I'm wondering if you might be able to comment on the cost and if there are any numbers that you can share with us on those.
Mr. Pander?
The recommendations before council today do not include any bylaw changes, and I would have to turn to Gil to discuss changes to the rezoning fees overall.
I'm unaware of the particulars of the fees that were increased last year, but we don't have any updates to those fees scheduled in the coming months.
Okay, thank you very much. I also understand that in moving forward to use renewable sources of energy, the city is looking at of course, being greener, and we have a goal of that being 2050. A number of times in several reports, we've said that this is aggressive in moving forward towards rezonings. And yes, as Councillor Reimer mentioned, these are new buildings, but many of the new buildings that we see have partnerships with nonprofits. So if the cost of building is higher, have we consulted with BC Housing or with nonprofits to see how that may impact them and their ability to provide social housing to Vancouver's most vulnerable individuals?
The recommendations that were brought forward for this change, we did consult with the BC Nonprofit Housing Association and BC Housing. We provided our detailed costing information from a quantity surveyor, and we got letters of support from BC Housing indicating that they were happy with the recommended changes.
Okay, and from BC Nonprofit Housing Association?
While they were supportive of the changes, they did not have time to sort of go through all the steps of getting their letter approved, but the changes recommended in this in the proposed updates to the rezoning policy were largely in response to BC Nonprofit Housing Association and the Condominium Homeowners Association concerns that the current requirements were making the buildings too complicated for them to properly operate and maintain. So this was in response to say, could we have our policies simplify the resultant buildings to make them easier and more affordable to operate?
Okay, but another question that I have is regarding LEED and passive housing standards. So, for instance, LEED used to be the standard that I would say everyone in the industry looked towards as the best practice or the best standard. As we continue to learn more, and I believe that it was practiced in the community. Passive housing has also been an option, as LEED sometimes requires materials to be brought in from worldwide. You can't use locally sourced materials. Would we see the same type of red tape here with the new rezoning policies that we're seeing for the green buildings?
Well, the changes include, allow for passive house to meet these requirements. The changes were generally undertaken both to reduce greenhouse gases, to simplify buildings, to not impact the cost of construction or operation, improve health, and to your point, specifically to increase the business opportunities for local businesses. What we're doing in the recommendations is in simplifying the buildings, we rely less on imported technologies from Europe and Japan, and rely more on what is typically locally provided materials such as high-performance windows, insulation, and thermally building details that break the thermal bridges. So those typically, especially windows and insulation, are typically regionally provided materials.
I have one last quick question. Try and get it in the last 5 seconds here. Just wondering, as for energy sources, are all energy sources, including natural gas, currently welcomed? And will they be treated the same way? Or will applicants be encouraged to use a certain type of energy in their building?
So all sources of energy are still permitted under this, and we believe that there will be a mix of electric and natural gas as a typical provision. So they're all allowed, they're all welcome, but there will be a reduction in overall energy use.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Debate on the motion.
Actually, if I could ask a few questions. Thank you. I know I did have questions. I was going to roll them into debate, but I'd rather deal with them.
The last questions. We are moving to debate.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Mr. Chair. And thank you, can I say thank you very much, Mr. Panda, for answering the questions that I've sent to you in detail. It was very helpful. But I have a few questions arising out of that. And one question has to do with, there's a lot of people who talk about the need to make a big leap. Because if you don't make the big leap to 100% sort of carbon-free and 100% renewable energy, where we are headed as a city, you end up making incremental changes that then make it more difficult. So the question I'm going to ask you is, if we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% and energy use by 35% in new builds, will that create a more difficult situation in those buildings that are built under those rules, adapting to new rules that we are aiming for to be a 100% renewable city?
No, the recommendations both will prepare these buildings built under the, if approved, these rezoning requirements. It will make them easier to adapt or adopt future improvements to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. But in addition, the changes in this report will prepare industry to more cost-effectively implement potential future policies and regulations, because it begins to normalize high-performance windows, improved insulation, heat recovery ventilators, and as those, of course, get used more and more commonly in industry, while we're seeing they don't increase costs now, those costs will actually come down as the volume and the usage of those materials, those high-performing materials, increases.
Okay. Good to know. My second question has to do with if we are giving people options, developers options in new builds. One of them is to do passive house standard, but passive house standard, which is fantastic for energy, it doesn't deal with, for example, hot water. So do we have in our bylaws like solar ready to enable the adaptation later on of those buildings to include, for example, potentially solar hot water tanks, so that they can do 100% of heating hot water in the winter months. But can we move in that direction, or are we expecting to move in that direction?
We currently allow and require in the construction of new homes that they be solar ready. So that provides space on the roof and runs to run either piping or electrical wiring to enable the adoption of solar technologies in the future. Largely, most of those opportunities apply where you have lower density development and you've got more roof area per unit area. So that is something that the bylaws require in 1- and 2-family homes where they are solar ready, and that enables the future installation of solar.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Okay. Debate. Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you very much. I've been reading the correspondence that's been coming in about this, the proposed changes, and I do have some concerns. I have many concerns, actually, and most of those concerns are regarding affordability, and also in moving forward to make sure that we remember that. It certainly needs to be a fine balance, and I know that we all are committed to increasing renewable energy here at the City of Vancouver. And 2050, although it's been stated, I think 6 times, not in this report, but in another report by our staff, is aggressive. I am very concerned. I'm concerned about the cost of affordable housing. I'm concerned that we already are trying to work with nonprofit organizations that provide housing to people who only receive $375 a month for shelter allowance. I also understand with the BC Nonprofit Housing Association that there are several, most of the nonprofits, I would say, that come to Vancouver City, either partnered in a project or looking for the city to grant some type of relaxation for them, be it through a grant or through funding. It doesn't bring comfort to me, especially considering this is unfinished business and there has been time, and we have received letters since, that BC Nonprofit Housing Association has not, at this point, sent a letter endorsing the strategy. I understand that they were consulted, but that is a concern of mine. In moving forward, I think that I can speak for myself. I would very much like my home to be completely renewable. I would love to have solar panels on my roof. I currently can't afford that. I think that there are a number of people in the City of Vancouver who cannot afford that. So we need to move forward as we will, but we need to wait for the technology also to advance. And I'm concerned that we don't have numbers. There aren't numbers as to how much this is going to cost or how much the cost increase is going to be on a project built to current standards versus these standards. And for me, that's concerning. We've also received a letter, I understand, from the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, and I just had a chance to read it this morning, but they state that they respectfully submit that their members are concerned around the recent report and the ramifications of that. So without that clarity, I cannot support this. I can't support this recommendation. However, in moving forward, I certainly have supported the Renewable City Plan because it's a goal. It's not a promise. I think it's important to make goals, but to promise things at what cost? So I'm balancing affordability here versus the environment, and I think that we've already seen fees go up in rezoning. already 30% fee increase in rezoning last year, and I'd be more than happy to send that report over. I'm sure staff will be able to catch up. I know our director of planning is I don't want to say new, but fairly new. So I'm concerned about that. Also, single-family residential homes, although this is new buildings, I mean, what ramifications and impacts may this have in using less energy? I just heard we're using less energy, but what types of energy? What will the mix be? Will there be certain requirements for a portion of that to be hydroelectric, to be natural gas, to be other? I don't have those numbers, and without those numbers, I'm not comfortable supporting this because I need to put affordability first, especially for those vulnerable residents in Vancouver, and we're seeing our homeless numbers creep up and up and up. So with that concern, I will not be voting for this. Thank you very much.
Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Sorry, Mr. Acting Mayor. First of all, let me just say that the exigencies of rapidly increasing global climate change absolutely demand that everyone, every jurisdiction, every level of government act aggressively to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and ensure that we are doing everything we can to avoid catastrophic climate change, which is proceeding because we are not reducing our greenhouse gas emissions fast enough. And I am very proud of our staff's work on this and our city and the role of City Council in moving us forward on an aggressive path. I would even encourage us to be more aggressive, but be it that it is may, and understand the balance that's needed, I think that we are headed very much in the right direction, and our children will thank us for the moves that we are making on this file and others around mitigating climate change. Secondly, I would like to just point out for Councillor DiGenova that our staff did present very precise figures on savings both in construction and operational costs, and I will repeat what staff said. In terms of construction savings, it would cost either 30 cents per square foot extra to build, but could save up to $4.90 per square foot to build. In terms of operational savings, it's between $1.1 to $6 a square foot in savings. And that prompted the Urban Development Institute to write us a letter, thank our staff for the consultations that they've had with us. And I will quote from that letter. They said that staff shared with us extensive costing analyses and demonstrated that housing affordability over time will not likely be compromised by the proposed changes. In fact, we are going to be better off. It will be more affordable within the city if we make these moves. I want to note that there is flexibility that is being offered to developers in this plan so that, for example, developers can choose to do the passive house standard. We are going to need to move forward in terms of hot water heating in the future. I look forward to that, as I've mentioned to staff. But in terms of envelope and restricting energy loss and increasing the quality of the interior environment, which that standard does as well, I think we're on the right path with that as an option. And other flexibilities in terms of building envelopes, focusing on reducing the energy loss and at the same time increasing, as I say, the quality, indoor air quality. I really like the fact that there's a requirement to use low emission materials so that volatile organic compounds are reduced. I think that's a concern for many people. So there's a lot of sort of related to buildings that are ancillary potentially to the energy issue, but still very important in terms of construction standards that create for better buildings overall and increased livability. This is overall a policy and a set of directives in terms of building code that I think will put this city more into a leadership role. We are still having to work with standards that are superior in European cities in particular, but we're on that path. I'm very happy we are. I'm assuming we're going to be making changes over time. This will not be the last of those changes as we move to 100% renewable energy city, but I really thank everyone, including all those people who wrote in and gave us very good feedback. I don't have maybe the same letters that Councillor DiGenova has, but certainly I found very strong support from our city and great pride in our city's move on this front. So I'll be voting yes.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Meggs.
Glad you got there. I was waiting. Well, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I, like Councillor Carr, will be voting yes on this because I know that for the first time that anyone can remember, sea ice is still not forming in the Arctic, and there's localized flooding in Southlands and daily consequences of climate change, which this whole strategy is designed to mitigate and protect us against. It's not a choice between affordability or preparation for this. We need to prepare now, and the net effect of Councillor DeGenova's position is to say that she's prepared to wait for what, I'm not sure. We have, as Councillor Carr says, the answers to the questions that she raises, and we're hearing from certain individuals, certain groups that have concerns, but they're not prepared to say don't do anything about climate change because I need some more analysis. They're not saying, for heaven's sakes, don't modernize your building standards because there could be a downside here somewhere. We know from the analysis our staff has done there is no downside, there's a huge upside, which is it prepares our city for what we all know is going to happen, unless Councillor DeGenova is working from facts that the rest of us are not sharing about the realities of climate change. So I think this is a critical plan. I don't think it has a negative impact on affordability at all, and I think the net effect of the NPA's position here today, if they vote no, is to say we're not that worried about climate change and we're not actually that certain it's going to be a big problem, which puts them in a very tiny and I think unfortunate minority in this city.
Councillor Affleck.
I didn't realize we're in an election campaign already, Councillor Meggs. You know, I think that, thank you, Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. You know, I think that we have a proud history in the city of being ahead of the curve on it when it comes to making decisions. That's not coming out of me. We have a proud history in the city of making decisions in this chamber that have made positive impacts on how our city grows and how we achieve our goals for greenhouse gas emissions. We have an average of 2.5% reduction per year in the policies that we have created. It's an already aggressive process we have in the city for reducing GHGs. And I think we should be proud of that, absolutely. The question today is, as Councillor Genova brought up, was about affordability is one thing, which is important, but also is this draconian and overly aggressive, perhaps? Have we pushed the agenda a bit too far ahead, and are we off balance as a city in the time we have? There's also the issue of clean energy and green energy and renewable energy and all those other questions. We have a province where we generate and create or get natural gas, and it's affordable, and it's working for us in Vancouver as a way to reduce GHGs. I think that's important to know that actual natural gas has transformed our city to be a much more green city. I find it ironic that Vision Vancouver and Good Green Party have opposed Site C, which is a place where we truly can create renewable energy, and they also oppose natural gas, and they also oppose everything other kind of potential energy. I'm not sure where they think energy comes from, perhaps some kind of magic formula that we don't know about. Perhaps it's nuclear power. Perhaps they're supportive of that renewable energy. I don't know. Perhaps Vision Vancouver has a plan for nuclear power plants in Vancouver like they do in Europe. I don't know. But from my point of view, we have a strategy in the city that's been very effective and very successful, internationally renowned. We should be proud of that. We also, though, have to think about how people live in the city, how they can afford to live in the city. At what speed at which should we move at? Absolutely, we have a problem in the world with the impact of the environment and climate change. Nobody is denying that in this chamber, I don't think. But what we as a city can do at a local level in a way that the people of the city can manage to live their lives, not only regarding the environment, but also just how do I raise my kids? When Councillor Carr talks about we do this for my kids in the future, well, we're not going to have kids in this city in the future because they can't afford to live here. So I won't support this because I think it's overly aggressive at this point in time. I think that we have a source with natural gas that's effective for now, and I think we have a plan, an effective plan, and a way of measuring our success already, and we're changing that, which I find interesting. I'm worried that the data will be off in the future, but we have a very successful formula in the city that's been working for very long. We already have approved many new regulations in the city that will effectively improve those numbers without being overly aggressive like this and overly draconian. So I won't support this today. Thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I hear in this room is basically that everybody has the same goals. Everybody wants to do something about climate change. Everyone feels that it's a critical issue. I don't know anyone that doesn't feel that. I do know that everybody has a different answer, has things that we feel are important. If anybody would like to finish speaking before I go on, I'm happy to relinquish my time. Otherwise, I will keep speaking. Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you. I do think that listening to the people that have come in to talk to us, professionals who we respect, who are well known in their communities, have said to us, perhaps we're moving too fast. Perhaps science hasn't given us this answer or that answer that is actually going to work for Vancouver. And when I meet with scientists, when I talk to the National Research Council, when we have distinguished people come in to speak to us here and say, well, perhaps Passive House is not going to be the answer for a city that is this warm. Why are you, in essence, pushing that? I don't have the answers yet. And I think I'm glad that other people feel they have the answers. But I try to listen to as many of our scientists as possible because we do know that many of the gifts that have been given to humans that are in the ground have changed our lives for the better. Medically is something that I'm particularly aware of. And to instantly say, we can't use these gifts any longer, as opposed to saying, how can scientists help us figure a way to use these gifts and not damage the earth any further. So I do think long and hard about these issues. I also hear all the people that have written to us. These letters have come to mayor and council, the organizations, the province and the energy saying, no, we don't want you to move forward in a certain way because, and I am deeply concerned. I do hear those letters and the voices in those letters telling us that why don't we take some more time. The letter from Fortis that came telling us that they absolutely are not in favor. The letter that we have had from a number of people saying you're moving too fast. We don't have the real answers. I would like to see more funds go towards research so that we do have better answers forward. So I do have a number of issues with the report. I do think it makes life extraordinarily frightening and difficult for a number of our citizens because they feel that their life is being changed and yet something isn't in place to replace what they needed, what they use at a price that they can afford. And I can only think of the disaster that happened when with all good intents, we here in council wanted the Olympic Village to certainly have energy that was possible. And the letters that came to us, people that couldn't afford it, those expenses were far too high for them in terms of heating and how they looked after their places. So I think we can't just say that the people who are writing to us are not important, that they don't care about the environment. They do care. They just want to understand the answers. They want better answers. And I feel the same way. So I am still looking, I'm still listening, I'm still waiting to see, but I do find there are too many issues here where I have more questions than answers. So with regret, I don't think I can vote for it at this time, but that does not mean I don't feel that if we took more time and gave science the opportunity to come up with some better replacements, it would mean a great deal to our citizens, and we could move forward without really damaging their lives at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks very much, Mr. Acting Mayor. I actually am kind of amused to listen to the MPA's rally against this, and I'm a bit perplexed that all they want to do is say no. And Councillor Councillor Ball, who just left, I was hoping would stay to hear a suggestion. I think rather than just say no, it might be helpful to bring in amendments. And I know that we would be certainly open to listening to those amendments. One of the suggestions that Councillor Ball brought forward is that she needed to have more research, hear from more researchers, more scientists. Well, that's probably an interesting suggestion, so why not make an amendment that this be postponed until she hears 13 scientists or researchers or 15 or however number, or she claims she needs much more time to comprehend all of these reports that are coming in and the analysis that's being done by these scientists. So let's have a time, let's have an amendment. Let's have an amendment that says whatever length of time the MPA wants to put this off to, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe a year, maybe until the ice flows in the north or such that it doesn't matter anymore, but whatever, come up with something positive rather than just saying, we don't like this, we don't understand it, researchers aren't unified. So if we could have something positive in the way of amendments, I think that all of us would be open to listening to those and possibly voting in favor rather than, obviously, we're going to be split if we just vote the way it is.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Before I move back to Councillor Reimer for closing comments on the matter, I'll just add my few words. I would agree with the comments made that I think what has been stipulated or announced that everybody seems to be on the same page. I would use the words, in fact, reflect that people are saying that they support taking this type of action, and that's a good positive sign. The question is, what action will you take and how quickly will you take those actions in order to address the situation that we know is coming? And so that is, I think, the defining difference between, I think, two camps that are evident in today's vote. And I'm concerned that some of the reasons for more time and not taking action earlier are articulated in the fashion that it is. Some letter reading has taken place today, and I thought I would share with you a letter that came into us, and perhaps Council did not read all the letters. A letter in particular that I found compelling was from the Urban Development Institute that came into us November the 14th. And since I will start my timer and just to make sure I stay on time. Oh, it's my time too. To Mayor and Council, updates to the Green Building Policy for rezoning reports. For the past 2 years, the Urban Development Institute has been working with the city, the province, other municipalities, utilities, and stakeholders to develop pathways to near zero buildings, including the Provincial Energy Step Code and the city's zero emissions building plan. We are supportive of the proposed first steps of this work as detailed in the updates to the Green Building Policy for rezonings report to Council. 2 years, supportive, working with multiple stakeholders. And just for those on Council that don't know who the Urban Development Institute is, they are the body that represents the development community at the larger development community, not all, but the majority component share of the development community in our city and further abroad as well. We agree with staff that the recommended actions in the report are technically feasible, viable, and should not impact the costs of housing in the city. Should not impact the costs of housing in the city. Staff shared with us extensive cost analysis and demonstrated that housing affordability over time will likely not be compromised by the proposed changes to the Green Buildings Policy for rezonings. UDI is pleased that the city is focusing its green buildings policies for rezonings on council priorities, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and energy consumption in buildings. At the same time, the proposals would allow developers to meet city objectives in a number of ways: adopting the passive house standard, improving building envelopes, and using renewable or low carbon power. Because the city has worked in cooperation with the province and other governments, the recommendations in the report are also similar to what's being proposed across British Columbia as the province moves towards its climate leadership plan. The municipalities municipalities begin to adopt the ESC. We hope that a similar approach will be considered by the federal government as it updates its national building code. And so what that says to me in that letter is that there has been extensive amount of work underway for the past 2 years, that we have consulted widely with a number of different stakeholders, including other orders of government, the people that build the buildings, the people that will live in these buildings, and that they agree that there's analysis, extensive analysis that was undertaken, and that that analysis yields that there should not be an increase in cost in housing. And so that's a letter that I've read. Certainly I've read the other letters as well, but I think it was important to balance the balance of... Councillor Affleck, you are out of order. Could you stop speaking, please? If you'd like to call a point of order, that is your right, but you should not be interrupting speakers. What is your point of order, Councillor Affleck? What is your point of order, Councillor Affleck? If you have no point of order, please take your seat. Councillor DiGenova, are you actually challenging the chair, or are you disrupting the flow of the meeting? Are you challenging the chair? You've spoken. So you should not be interrupting the chair then. If unless you have a point of order. Do you have a point of order? No, then please take your seat. Then please take your seat. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova, for taking your seat. Councillor Affleck, your outburst was inappropriate, and I'm calling you out for that outburst. Is there an issue with that? Then please cease. Thank you. The issue before us is whether or not we take action, and I think this report moves us in a place where we should and could make a significant impact for our buildings, and especially taking the leadership role that we have enjoyed and take pride in for many, many years now. I will absolutely thank staff for their efforts in making this happen, as the UDI letter also thanks staff for their efforts, in particular Sean Pander for his efforts. And this is, I think, a step still for much more that needs to be done in order to address the significant challenge that we face going forward. Councillor Reimer. Oh. There you go.
Could you reset the timer? Sorry, I just don't want anyone calling a point of order for me being over, because you used my time. Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. It is unfortunate that I am here, as I was at the beginning of this debate, back into the fact-checking mode that I had to start off with. This is an update to a rezoning policy. As I'm hoping all councillors are aware, single-family homes in the city are not subject to rezoning policies. So to the point Councillor DiGenova raised, it will have no impact on either existing or new single-family houses, to the point that Councillor Ball raised about solar panels. Oh, sorry, Councillor DiGenova, about her not being able to afford solar panels. That's fine, because there's nothing in this policy that will require you to be able to afford solar panels. This is a rezoning policy. It has nothing to do with the energy going into a building. It has everything to do with how much of that energy the building would use, something that is called energy efficiency, and a key part of our renewable city strategy. There was a question asked to staff about choice. Will we be able to use all the kinds of fuel Yes, because I think they presumed that you meant in your question all kinds currently available. They did not point out that you can't use nuclear, because that's not allowed. You can't use coal, you can't use heating oil, can't use wood stoves in a new building, because over the time we've decided as a society that those kinds of fuels are more damaging to us collectively than they are a positive benefit, even though coal, heating oil, and wood stoves are actually can be quite affordable if you have access to cheap sources of fuel for that. So this is about energy efficiency and about using less energy. It's not surprising that the company that we pay energy bills to would be, a little upset that we'd be paying them less money as a result of more efficiency in buildings. It's why the oil corporations strongly fought vehicle fuel efficiency standards in California. Thankfully, they were unsuccessful because we have all benefited as a society from that. We as consumers will benefit from paying less energy in our buildings as a result of more energy efficient buildings being built.
Councillor Reimer, please take your seat. Councillor DeGenova, what's your point of order?
I had to find the exact section, but it's 5.2, section F. It was implied by Councillor Reimer what I was asking staff, and Councillor Reimer wouldn't know what I was asking staff or what she thought I was asking staff, and I was perfectly happy with staff's very educated answer. So I just wanted to remind Councillor Reimer.
Thank you. I don't believe that she overstepped her boundaries. Councillor Reimer, please continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sure this may inspire a point of order, but I can only surmise that this deliberate misrepresentation over and over and over again is intended to be fear-mongering. And before the
point of order
called, the definition of fear-mongering, I'd like you to sit down.
What section of the procedure bylaw has been breached, Councillor DeGenova?
5.2, section F. Reflects upon the character of any person or group of persons. We could go through all of them, but listing the NPA, but also using the term
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova. You have listed your section. I would ask Councillor Reimer to focus her debate on the matter and the substance of what is being discussed, if at all possible.
Thank you, Chairperson. And to my point, all of the issues that were raised by some councillors in their comments as to why they're voting against it are issues that actually aren't material to the report, which is about energy efficiency, not the source of energy. So the only reason I could surmise that somebody would bring that up over and well, there's two reasons. One is that the report hasn't been read, and I'd like to think that that's not the case. The second reason would be that someone was engaging in the action of deliberately arousing public fear or alarm about a particular issue by misrepresenting the facts related to that issue. I think it's unfortunate. I think history will judge it poorly, but I am pleased to see that today a majority of councillors will vote to provide more energy efficient buildings for residents of Vancouver in the future. And I'd like to thank staff for all of the work that you've done on it. One day this will not be as politicized as it is, because I think the benefits for us environmentally are obvious, and the benefits for us economically and for affordability in our households are obvious, but also the social benefits of being able to not be dependent on global market forces around energy, I think, over the long term, and certainly what countries that are much further along on renewables have found is that having self-determination and autonomy on energy is key in them being able to have social and economic self-determination. That's the kind of city I want to live in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. All right, we'll move to the voting queue. If you could. What is your point of order, Councillor Stevenson? What procedure by law has been breached? No, that does not qualify. It is the general answer is yes, and I keep track of the time, and I know that the mayor and other chairs keep general track of the time of how long these discussions on points of orders and interruptions are. Okay. Call for the vote. And the vote. We have the motion passes with Councillor Ball, Councillor Affleck, and Councillor DeGenova in opposition. Okay. That concludes the items held. We will move through to bylaws. No. Well, that wasn't, sorry, that was unfinished business. Councillor Affleck, you had held a report. Councillor, if you just push your button so that you can get onto the queue. If you'd like to speak to the item that you held. Okay. Councillor Deal, would you had something specific? Yeah. Okay, so you'll come on after Councillor Affleck. Councillor Affleck. This is item number 3, New Year's Eve celebration funding.
Yep, just a couple of questions for staff. I'm not sure who I'm asking.
Okay, do we have staff here to answer your questions, Councillor Affleck? Ms. Llewellyn-Thomas?
Mr. Chairman, Kathleen Llewellyn-Thomas, General Manager of Community Services.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. One is the request for money from us or for the funds. Last year when we approved the funding, there was a discussion that this would be a one-time request last year. And I'm wondering why we're getting another request, not as much, but why that's the case, and if this will this be the last time, or will we see them? Because they're also getting funding from culture, if I understand, for $8,000 as well. So I'm wondering if this will be the last time we see this coming forward, or is this going to be an ongoing thing?
Our expectation is that this will be the last time. The grant that we're giving is being given quite late in the day, and we're satisfied that that the New Year's Eve folks have done their best to raise all the funds that they have, but they still have a gap. This year's a particularly large New Year's Eve celebration. It's Canada 150, so they've expanded it. So it's a little bit hard for us to benchmark it against the only one previous example. So as you say, this is a much smaller contribution. The whole event is bigger, and at a total of 58,000, we're subsidizing them by 9%, whereas last year it was up closer to 25%. So I expect that this will be the last time, and we've been messaging that to them.
I guess it's a challenging question, because the 150 money that they get, or the expansion, might increase their numbers for 1 year, which may put them over the top for potentially access to our funding for festivals, which is 100,000 people plus, I believe. Have you considered that as a possibility for next year, that they might come back asking for the festival process if they're over? I think it's 100,000.
Well, the $8,000 that they got through the community grants was the regular their regular application. So we would evaluate their application next year as we did this year. So if there is a community grant to be given, we would evaluate it in that regard. And they're very small compared to the total cost.
And what recognition are we getting that? Because I didn't see anybody at their press conference, and from what I was told, we weren't acknowledged, which is unfortunate, surprising. I'm wondering if what acknowledgements we're getting as a supporter at 9% for the event.
Mr. Chair, can I jump in?
Yes.
I know the event organizers are here. I don't know if you want to direct questions
I
directly
think
to them.
No, this is more just policy. I just want to know what our rules are. Thank you.
I am not aware of any rules around that, but we'll certainly be working with them on a go-forward basis to ensure that the city's given the acknowledgement for the contribution that we're making.
We don't have a set structure of acknowledgement when we give money, like there has to be a logo on certain things, and we must have a structure for that.
I'm not familiar with one. I might have to ask my staff, or perhaps the city manager can help.
Sure. I don't think we actually have an approved process for that. Last year there was a more involvement with the event, and so we were recognized, and I think we will be recognized this year. However, when they announced it, we didn't have any kind of indication of the level of support. I think when they announced it a few weeks ago, they didn't have council's kind of approval for this level of support. I presume that if council does approve this recommendation, we would be recognized as we were last year. We did talk to them in the run-up to their event a couple of weeks ago, and we weren't in a position to make a commitment, obviously, without council's directive on that, and so we weren't recognized in the way that we might have been had we been at the table earlier.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Deal. Oh, Councillor DiGenova. Questions to staff? Yes.
I do have questions to staff. I understand that many times in many reports, even especially when we hear from the Vancouver Economic Commission, we hear about all of the investments made in the city of Vancouver. This is a free, fun family event, and I understand that there are other family events around the festive season that secure their own funding completely and have not come to the city for a dime. I think that one of them is a Christmas tree lighting, for example. I'm just wondering why it is that, as Councillor Affleck mentioned, we haven't sort of moved forward with asking people to invest in this event the same way we have in others, perhaps. And from the report, I see that there have been requests made. I'm just wondering why there's that substantive change, considering often our mayor in chambers and out of chambers talks about the investments, especially the economic investments that local business, small business is being made in the city of Vancouver.
Well, the recommendation is before you because this group has raised significant funds. They're mounting a $650,000 event, and the majority of the funding has been procured with community donations and business partnerships. And it really is, because it's a new event. This is its second time. It's larger than the last time because of the Canada 150 and the expectation it's in a bigger geography as well. And this is a small percentage at only 9%, and it is expected to be the one time. So we're kind of weaning them off city support in order to establish an ongoing event that builds community and allows people to participate on a really special night of the year.
But just to be clear, Councillor DiGenova, this is not a city event. This is a grant to a society. And so your question is, why don't we ask for more sponsorship and funds to come to the event? It's because it's not our event.
I understand. Thank you for the answer to that. But now I feel like I should ask a question to clarify that. We are being asked for funding. That's clearly what the report states. So I suppose the question to clarify, because obviously some councillors did not understand my question, was did we go to the society and the organization and ask them to show us how they've been advertising this in a sponsorship capacity?
Yes, we've been meeting fairly frequently with the society to get updates on their progress, and this gap was identified, and we're getting close to the event, and it was our judgment that we should recommend this help so that they can have a successful year this year and create the platform for being more autonomous going forward.
Thank you. And I know when Councillor Affleck had originally brought forward the motion regarding a free, fun, all ages New Year's Eve celebration in the city, that the idea was for it to be cost neutral and have sponsorship, just as our mayor and council have been out there saying that people are investing in the city of Vancouver more so now than ever before. I don't see that as investing necessarily just in us as the city of Vancouver. I see that in a number of the events. Just because as a councillor I get asked the question.
And DiGenova, this is a question period, so you're expressing opinion. In the procedure bylaw, you're not allowed to express your opinions in questions. If you could get to your question, please.
I'm getting to my question, thank you. I lost my train of thought there, being interrupted, sorry. But I will ask this. I'm going to ask regarding other organizations that come to us, because as a councillor, I'm asked often. Just as when we get grant applications, I'm asked and we receive letters from those who don't receive that. You mentioned Canada 150, some special exceptions as to why we're doing this again this year after we said we wouldn't. Are there other organizations that we could compare this to where we have said no more funding, but we will give you funding again for another year? And again, I'm very supportive of the New Year's Eve celebration. I just have to ask these questions.
I'm not familiar with them. We do have a very generous program of granting, which we manage throughout the year, and you're going to be seeing those coming forward in subsequent reports. So our desired program is what we would like to stay with, but we do use our professional judgment to make exceptions in this instance.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Deal.
Yes, thank you very much.
On the issue,
You've got a list. Thanks, Ms. Llewellyn Thomas. this was really fun to read this report side by side with the one from last year. And there are some significant differences, and perhaps we can run through some of those differences if you can clarify them, because they're not in the report itself. Do you remember what the expected attendance was last year? I think it was around 4,000.
You know what, my colleague,
Yes.
Ms. Chunga is here.
I should have given you a heads up. I was going to ask.
That's all right.
I think there's people in the audience who could answer those questions, the anticipated and the outcome.
We were expecting a maximum of 15,000, I think was my recollection.
Got 80?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Estimated attendance 80,000.
Magic, it came available.
Thank you. So again, with the help of Daily Hive and the Downtown Vancouver BIA and our other sponsors, media sponsors, Starbucks, we took an event which had not successfully been put on for over 10 years and got 80,000 people out to it.
That's right, we did.
Okay. With the resources that were uncertain of what we needed because we had no idea what number would show up. Okay. Exactly. So this report then would be a response to that in terms of looking forward and evolving this event?
Yes, it would.
So we do have currently have a special event policy in which events come in and apply for grants, go through a network policy, and so, but this was a special exemption because we had decided, thanks to not only the mayor's work with Daily Hive, responding to some Twitter challenges to have an event, and Councillor Affleck's motion, there was direction to have this event.
That's correct.
Very good. So some of the other changes for this year is there's a second stage that's been added. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Is that partly because of the issues of crowding and density?
It's partly because of that, also because clearly it's hard for us to estimate how many people will come, and also because it's the 150 and there's additional resources for that as well.
Right. So we're helping to provide some of the security measures to ensure that it's a safe, fun event for everybody downtown.
That's right. The feedback from the last event was that it's better for security and safety reasons to take a large crowd and spread it out as much as possible.
Okay. And I do see, in response to some of the other questions, it looks from the reports as if there are several new corporate and business and media sponsors that have come on board.
Yes, there are.
Okay, so in the report from last year, it actually refers to the fact that this will be a building event and that we're hoping that this is, because of this good investment the first year, that we will then see us grow and get more support.
Yes, that it'll create its own momentum. Its success will create its own momentum.
So it's following exactly the path that we had hoped it would.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll have some debate on the motion. Moved by Councillor Deal, seconded. Councillor, okay. Then let's clear that and advance Councillor Ball to questions.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a wonderful event. And the question that I have out of my experience there was that there were a lot of children. So I was interested in seeing that the report mentions the average age was about 33, but I saw thousands of children. So I'm just wondering if there was any more information coming to us, or could we ask for that, because it did seem to serve families in a great way, and it would be wonderful for us to know how many kids came.
Sure. We'll attempt to get that kind of information, although I would offer that families also include very old people, and
Yes.
so hopefully the high number of children, which are really visible, the average was brought up a bit by the fact that multi-generational participation was happening.
Which was wonderful,
Yeah.
having grandparents and kids there. It was
Yes.
truly a lovely event. So it's nice to know, because, again, for sponsors for them, there are so many people out there who do children's, provide things for kids that they would love to be able to sponsor it. So it'd be nice to get that out there. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Deal, you're going to move a motion.
Councillor Affleck, do you have more questions? I'll move the motion.
And Councillor Affleck, you'll second?
There you go. We can make it a big happy day for everybody. I'll speak very strongly in favor of this. This is a tremendous event, and it was kind of embarrassing as a city to not have a New Year's Eve festival for all those years. We had First Night a long time ago, and we indeed did hear a lot from people that they wanted an event, they wanted to celebrate in the streets. There were many private events that were a lot of fun for adults in particular, because they were usually alcohol events in bars and so forth, but we didn't have that big downtown festival where we can hold hands, look at the fireworks and say, we live in a great place, let's have another great year in front of us. So I congratulate all of our sponsors and partners, and not ours, it's not our event, all of the team from the not-for-profit. I want to give a special shout out to Carm for challenging the mayor on Facebook and Twitter that why didn't we have an event, and then take up the challenge when the mayor said back, well, then you have to put an event on. So here we are. And then Councillor Affleck had a motion as well. And the Downtown Vancouver BIA, such a tremendous partner. Tourism Vancouver, Starbucks was early in, Global Television was early in. So all these partners got something off the ground for the first time. There was a bit of trepidation, what's going to happen, how many people will come downtown, how will they behave, what will it feel like downtown? And it was over the top successful. And everybody stayed calm. The police came out saying, you know, we didn't expect that many people, but thumbs up. So I'm thrilled to see this growing. I'm thrilled to see us taking the extra efforts for 2017 for our 150 plus ceremonies, and very excited to see the future of this event as it grows and as this community takes ownership of it and makes it a really made in Vancouver type of event for all families throughout the region to come and celebrate. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Deal. Councillor Affleck.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. A few years ago when I put the motion forward about this, I have to admit it was somewhat selfish because I live downtown with 3 kids. We'd go out on New Year's Eve and we would wander around aimlessly looking for something to do, and there was nothing happening. And I do recall having lived downtown for so long, the days of the first night and the great family experience that was. So that was the impetus. It was personal, but also I knew that there was a need there because you'd find these, gatherings in various places with people desperately looking at their phones or looking for a clock, trying to figure out, is it New Year's yet? Is it New Year's yet? What happened? Is it New Year's? Is it New Year's? So,
Not quite yet, Councillor Affleck.
yeah, yes. Every day's New Year's at council. That's right, there we have a couple of them. So I was pleased when the DVBIA and the private groups put together this strategy. I think it's a good one. I think I am pleased with the answers from staff regarding the additional funding for 1 more year. I am hopeful that the success will continue. I think that you need to get these things off the ground in order to get the private sponsors on board and get that money. They need to see a track record, and I think that last year was a great start, and I think this year will be significantly bigger. And I think that it's great, and the $50,000 investment for us is a good one, in fact, because previously you'd be watching television, for example, somewhere in Canada, and they would go to, literally this happened, they would go to live hit in Montreal, live hit in New York, live hit in Toronto, live hit in Vancouver, and they had a camera in Vancouver, and there was no fireworks, there was nothing going on, and it was just like a picture of the city. A nice city, but where's the party? And so now, at least with our investment and participation as a partner with this event, we at least will get our bang for our buck in this city and around the world for exposure to millions and millions of people as a place to visit and a place that is fun. So I will support this and look forward to attending with my kids this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks very much. I'm very happy to support this motion. I'd like to thank Councillor Affleck for bringing this forward. I understand that perhaps some councillors believe that it came forward in other ways, and I think that there has been, for a long time, great support for a New Year's Eve event. I can say that when I was a teenager, it was difficult because unless you're of drinking age, most of the facilities that had fun celebrations wouldn't take all ages. It was 19 and above. So I think it's fantastic that we have not only an all ages celebration, but that we also have a free family event as costs. And yes, it's one of my favorite topics here. However, affordability in the city of Vancouver, I've heard from a number of individuals quite recently that, the cost of taking their family out and trying to provide for them, even at community centers, it's starting to get difficult to afford the cost of living in Vancouver. And this event, I know that the city is stepping up, and we are providing funding for this event along with others this year. But I'm very happy to support it because I think that it's something that we need to do, and we need to consider affordability moving forward, just as we are here today with this event, and making sure that we provide an option for people that perhaps don't have the chance to attend other events in our city, that would be excluded because of their age. And also, I think that it's important that we celebrate Vancouver and put ourselves on the world map, as Councillor Affleck mentioned. So I'll thank him again, and happy to support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and I'm also pleased to support this. It's something that's been obviously needed for quite some time. And I also wanted to comment that I completely agree with everything that Councillor Affleck said regarding this morning. Completely agree. But also want to point out that when the world again has a look at what a fabulous city, and as you pointed out, thousands and thousands of people will see this city once again, that will mean that thousands more will, of course, be wanting to move here, and we will again have to be creating much more affordable rental throughout the city as well.
Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Acting Mayor. I'm quite pleased to stand in support of this decision. I really thank the partners, including the DVBIA, for actually preparing this whole and coming to us as a council to say, you know, in an innovative and a bit, you know, risky way, to say that they wanted to do this for Vancouver. Councillor Affleck did take the lead in terms of a motion at council around this, so I thank him for that. I note that the budget request is for far less than it was last year, despite the fact that it's a bigger event. So we're headed in the right direction in both ways. And certainly anything that we can do as a city that supports the opportunities for people to gather, to celebrate together of all ages is very, very welcome. So thanks to all, and I will be voting yes.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you very much. I loved the event. I love seeing all the families there. I particularly love the fact that it was an event for everyone, and the multicultural component of the event was just great. There were so many new Canadians there with their families participating in a way that they didn't expect to, and to be able to have this lovely, lovely free event, and also the way that we were able to use the artists in the city to be able to bring a whole lot of joy to people. So any time the city can add joy is a good thing. So I really thank the organizers and all the city staff who worked together to make sure that we could do this. So thank you. I'm for it.
Just to be clear, thank you, Councillor Ball. So thank you. I will just say that it's nice to be able to advance this and have another year of celebration. It's important for us to celebrate in our public spaces. It's part of why we build a great city, and a great public realm is to enjoy that space together, and that makes us stronger as a society overall as well. And this is the ongoing effort of the city to support these types of initiatives. I do note that there's, as Councillor Jank had stated a little bit earlier, in an outburst, inappropriate outburst. How's that, Councillor Affleck? But he was making a point that I think was important to note, that there's also Lunar New Year's that we celebrate, and we do support Lunar New Year's in our grant to our large parade in Chinatown, and so it's appropriate for us in this fashion to provide a grant to support this New Year's as well, given that it's more widely celebrated as well. So happy to lend my support, and we'll move to the vote. We are all votes in. It's unanimous. 10 votes, all in favor. Thank you. Okay. Now we will move through to bylaws. We have bylaws 1 through 18 on the agenda for consideration of council. Does any member wish to hold any of the bylaws for debate or separate vote or conflict of interest? Seeing none, we have bylaws 15, 17, 18 are the public hearing enactment bylaws. Council members who are absent from the respective hearings may only vote if they have now confirmed they have reviewed the missed portions of the meeting, which includes viewing the related video clip. Bylaw 15 was a public hearing enacted bylaw from a hearing held on November the 15th, 2016. Councillors Jang and Reimer are absent from that hearing. Councillor Jang, have you viewed the proceedings and reviewed them? And will you be voting on bylaw number 15? Thank you. Councillor Reimer? There's an affirmative to both. Bylaw 17 is a public hearing enactment bylaw from a hearing held on July the 12th, 2016. Councillor Stevenson, you are absent from that hearing. Have you reviewed the proceedings? And if so, will you be voting on the enactment? Yes, thank you. Bylaw 18 is a public hearing enactment bylaw from a hearing held on June the 14th, 2016. Councillors Ball, Deal, and Reimer were absent from that hearing. Councillor Ball, have you reviewed the proceedings and will you be voting on the bylaw? Thank you, Councillor Ball. That's affirmative. Councillor Deal? Again, affirmative. Councillor Reimer? And that is again affirmative. All right. Would someone like to move adoption of bylaws 1 through 11 and 13 through 18? Moved by Councillor Jang, seconded by Councillor Stevenson. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, thank you. All right, we have section of notice of motion, new business, inquiries, and other matters. First up is Councillor DeGenova.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have sent in a motion under urgent business to the clerk that I'm hoping that we'll be able to address here today. And the motion is very similar, actually it's quite similar to a motion that was put forward last year by Councillor Meggs regarding lifting a moratorium on the taxis and new taxi licenses for the festive season. I think it's very important that we deal with this today, as this will be the first meeting, the last meeting before the holiday festive season, which technically I'm not sure if there is an official date to the start of that season. However, I would think that most people hold their festive parties in December and early January. So I have sent the motion in, and it also, I've actually quoted Councillor Meggs's former motion that he introduced last year. Yes.
Madam Clerk, could I have some advice in regards to when we considered Councillor Meggs' motion?
Under urgent business.
It was this year, this term, and Councillor Meggs had just a few months ago moved this forward, right? Okay, is that correct? But yeah.
I have listed the date, December 10th, 2015 in there.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Junior. I'm asking the clerk to check the dates for procedural fairness. So there was a motion considered by council as an urgent matter on that date. The thrust of that motion was that, yes. Yes, your point of order, Mr. Chair. Councillor Meggs.
Assist you in your decision making that this was done last year. I did have a conversation with staff, and I can't speak for them, but I think that they were prepared to manage this matter in an administrative way rather than by council motion this year. So I was comfortable that no further action was required, but I'm not, the outcome that we seek is the same. So I'm not too worried about it, just as a procedural matter. I wanted to provide that information.
Thank you, Councillor Meggs. At this point in time, I'm considering whether or not the motion is in order, given that if it is contrary to what we have previously decisioned, and whether or not a motion to rescind is necessary, a motion of rescission over what has been previously passed.
Might I make a
Yes,
suggestion?
City Manager.
I'd be happy to have this debated and voted tomorrow so that staff could review it. I don't know if that was the intention, but it would be helpful for me at least to have a chance to digest this and chat with staff and give everyone else the time to review it as well.
Okay. I'm trying to, just give me a second here. I'd like to, before considering the matter and ruling on whether or not it's in order or not in order, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess. Okay. We'll reconvene at 11 o'clock. Okay, it is past the hour of 11 a.m. We do 11 a.m. And we have quorum, so we'll reconvene council. After having reviewed the matter, I will rule that the matter is not urgent. It could have reasonably be foreseen that this matter could have been addressed earlier without the exercising of the council member's urgent section 10.4. That section is reserved for council members moving a motion at a regular meeting or that follows a standing meeting or as business that requires the urgent attention of council in connection with public health, safety, a financial or legal matter of significance to the city, or at the request of a leave of absence. And it does not fall under that category. And so it is not an urgent matter. It is, I would say, in order for you to move it as a motion and have it seconded and have it considered in the regular fashion. If council deems it to be of some importance and no one calls notice on the matter, then it can be considered today, but it is up to the will of council to either deal with it today or put it through the regular process. And as I said, Councillor DiGenova, you had in fact a year to bring this forward in advance of today to deal with this matter if you had wanted. And it's not that some circumstance had changed on you or the situation with taxis, but rather it was just your timing in terms of your lateness of bringing it before us. So it's not an urgent matter. So if you would like to put it on notice, I'm happy to receive that as a motion.
I would like to put it on notice, and I hope that no one will call notice on this, because that would mean that we'd have 13 days during the festive season that seniors, persons with disabilities, and considering the increased service needs over the festive season, that could impact vulnerable individuals. I also, I didn't mean to be late with this. Again, I think the holiday season or the festive season creeps up on all of us, and I understood that it was put forward as urgent business last year, so I had just followed suit and also introduced this as urgent business this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Deal, or Councillor DiGenova and Councillor Ball. My decision is made, and the only option for you is to either challenge the chair on my decision or accept it. Would you like to challenge the chair? Okay, so your clarity in terms of my ruling.
Wish to understand,
Yes.
are you happy for it to be brought forward today and debated today?
Yes, in fact, it's on the floor right now.
Yes, thank you.
And it's here for debate. I haven't, so far it's been moved and seconded by yourself. And unless somebody calls notice of motion on the matter, we can deal with it today.
Thank you. And do we have a queue on it?
I expect that, thank you, Councillor. Hopefully that clarifies the question for you. Okay, so we'll move to a amendment queue.
Amendment?
So that we can speak to, oops. So, where, so, main queue. Okay, Councillor Meggs speaking to the motion. Oh, I thought you had, because you had spoken on it, but absolutely. Councillor DiGenova.
I was asking why I was asking you to consider this today. I was trying to be brief in my comments to allow the chair to consider how to deal with this, and I respect that. This motion asked for something similar that was asked for last year, because I feel that especially during the festive season, we certainly have seen and we've heard reports that there is an increase in requested taxi service, and there are individuals in our community, being the liaison for the Persons with Disabilities Advisory Committee, and I know that Councillor Meggs was also the former liaison to that committee, committee, and he brought forward a similar motion to this. I hope it would be fair to say that it was similar. Last year, Councillor Ball is a liaison to the Seniors Advisory Committee, and she's agreed to second this. I think it's very important to remember that there are certain individuals with mobility issues and physical disabilities in our community that rely on taxi service or they're taxi savers. And that service is in a sense, very unreliable during the festive season because there's more of a demand, especially on the accessible taxi cabs. So I am asking that we consider this. I've tried to mirror the dates exactly the same as they were last year, set out, because I think it's important. Another note to make is I know that our Vancouver Police Department very much advocates for people not driving home when they're under the influence, and providing more taxis will hopefully send a message and encourage people to either book a taxi in advance because there's more out there, or they may feel that taxis are more readily available when other transit options are closed down or not available to them. As we also, I think many modes of active transportation, including cycling, are not recommended while under the influence. So I would hope that I would see council's support for this motion. I think that it's an important step, and I'm also asking in the therefore be it resolved section that just as last year, because I think every time we ask it helps, that we do urge the taxi companies to provide as many accessible taxis as possible, while at the same time keeping up the good fight and making sure that the Passenger Transportation Board knows that we have several taxis that we are waiting for, and most of those are accessible cabs. So thank you very much for entertaining this motion today, and I hope that I will have your support on this.
Just to be clear for council, what the procedure bylaw allows for under urgent, because there's been described that this is the exact same situation as what happened last year. Some of the content is similar, but it is not the exact same situation. Councillor Meggs in the previous year moved an urgent motion at the end of a committee meeting where normally motions are not entertained. This is a council meeting, and council does hear motions. This is the reason for this section within the procedure bylaw that we adopted, and this is being appropriate for it to come forward as a motion to be considered by council. That is not afforded under a committee structure, and that, therefore 10.4 is made available for that specific purpose under the procedure bylaw, and that's the I think a significant difference between the two opportunities described that were inaccurately described by Councillor DeGenova as being exactly the same, and it's not. Okay, so Councillor Meggs.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. I mean, we, as everyone around this table knows, have been caught in procedural hell on taxi issues for quite some time now, and look forward to some clarification from the province someday about what they're going to do with all of the difficult issues raised by ride sharing and so forth. And, you know, I was pretty comfortable based on some of the conversations I had with staff after the October discussion we had that they were ready to do what was necessary to make sure that we didn't suffer any loss of service during this period, but they also are placed in a difficult spot with regard to the moratorium, which council was unanimous on the first time. I think there were some differences the last time. But anyway, I have no issue with this really. I think that we should be circumspect, much as we all look forward to new disability taxis. It's probably not the case that the industry will field new accessible cabs for this holiday season. I hope that they'll do that to the largest degree possible, but there isn't a large fleet of accessible cabs sitting waiting to be rolled out in the next week. The other problem for the firms is sort of anticipating how to license them and whether or not they want to put them on the road and all that kind of thing in their difficult times in the taxi industry. But certainly we don't want to put any bureaucratic roadblock in the way of providing extra service if it's available, so I don't have any issue with this.
Thank you. Next we have Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And last year we did welcome Councillor Meggs' motion. It was a sane and compassionate motion, recognizing a real problem in the community. And I think we feel the same about a sane and compassionate motion again recognizing a real problem in the community. I have noticed that more and more holiday events are being held. For a few years they were cut back, but this year they have been spread out, and there are more and more of them, certainly throughout December. We want people to be safe. We don't want people to be drinking and not taking cabs because they're not available. We don't want people who are seniors, who have disabilities, to not be able to get to something that's important to them during this particular time. I believe there are approximately 15 different cultural events that are held during December, holiday events of one kind or another, and all of them are critically important to the communities that experience those events. So I would very much hope that we would follow our motion last year and again this year, vote for compassion and for sanity and keep people safe on the roads. So I am for the motion and hope we can move forward.
I will advance to Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I do actually have a question, so I'm hopeful that Councillor DiGenova, in her summary, will be able to answer the question I have, and that is whether or not the new taxi licenses are available to the Vancouver Taxi Association. Companies, we know that they have provided service that has had a much higher percentage of accessible taxi cabs, and I know that they have an outstanding request for new taxi licenses in with the Passenger Transportation Board. So my hope is that that is the way we're going, and if that is the way that this motion suggests or intends, I'm quite happy to support it. I do think that we need more taxis in the holiday season. It's clear that the demand is much higher, and that people are really, particularly given that we are not a city that has ride sharing at this point, that it's the taxis that supply that demand. So pending the response of Councillor DiGenova to my question, I'm tentatively at this point suggesting that I will be supportive of this motion.
Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to support it, notwithstanding the fact that Councillor Meigs has clearly said it's an unnecessary motion and was able to be dealt with administratively. It took a lot not to call notice, and it's only because I have a bad headache that I chose not to, but I did want to rise to say that in the future, if somebody uses as an excuse, it's exactly the way it was done in the past, so therefore we can do it again. That is exactly the reason you wouldn't rule it urgent business, which was your ruling, and exactly correct. So I hope that in the future, the original circumstances that led to Councillor Meig's motion do not exist in this case. So I'm going to vote for it as a redundant motion to get the issue off the floor, but I hope we're able to be a bit more organized in the future.
Thank you. Just a question to staff on administrating this on a go-forward basis beyond this year, rather than it having come to us on an annual basis where it may or may not be urgent matter for future years. How do we go about structuring this? And maybe for council's clarity, how do staff intend to structure this so that it doesn't come back to us on a regular basis, absent a change at the provincial level in terms of their decision to allow for extra taxis and such into the area, or a change in the taxi structure overall?
I think Councillor Meigs referred to this. Staff have been engaging with the VTA to assess whether they would be applying to the province for additional capacity. I think we saw from last year that there actually wasn't a ton of additional capacity that the cabs were able to bring online in the short notice. But what we've been doing is engaging with the industry and getting a sense of what their plans were, and we've been assuming we would adjust our approach to this if there was additional capacity that was able to come online. So we've kind of been working proactively, and we're happy to be more proactive in the future to bring a discussion forward to council in advance of the holiday season to update you on our efforts in this so that you're not needing to react, if that would help.
I think it would be helpful. The question, though, outstanding for me is whether or not you need ongoing direction from council in regards to being responsive to the need on our streets with the resources that may or may not be available from the taxi industry, whether or not you need a renewed direction from council like the one before us. Councillor Meggs initially moved the motion that gives the description of how we would like this to go forward for this specific period. This reaffirms that, I think, for this season, but in advance of the future seasons to come, how do we go about addressing that?
As Councillor Meggs said, as staff, we were prepared to allow the temporary holiday taxis to operate based on the previous direction, and that's kind of the way we were moving. So this just confirms the path that we were on, and we'll try to bring a proactive report to council in advance, so we're not in this position next year.
And so would we actually need a bylaw change at this point in time?
We're happy to have it, but we don't believe at this point that we must have it.
Okay. So how should the language be structured in a way where going forward that we don't need to come back again next year?
I'm not in a position to be able to indicate that at this point, and happy to, as I said, bring something back more proactively in the future, but I'm not sure I can draft it on the floor here in a way that we won't need to come back to. I think there's also, I guess I will say, with Uber, with what's happening provincially, regionally, I'm not sure that anything I say now is going to be relevant next year, and I think there's just I think we're all dealing with a changing playing field, and so we're all kind of reacting as we go here. There was discussion Uber would go forward before the provincial election, and then there wasn't, and so my sense is we'll move forward through this holiday season, and we'll need to reassess once the dust settles into the next year.
Okay. I see, Councillor Meggs, you've come back on, but is that... Okay. So you'll get last crack at it, Councillor DiGenova. How's that? Councillor Meggs?
Well, I just want to echo what City Manager just said. I mean, we all, I think, at least I do, I won't speak for others, don't want to put words in anybody's mouth here, but I pray that we have a new policy framework from the province, whichever government or whichever party is successful in the election, and that all of this is resolved in a more forward-looking way long before we get to this discussion a year from now. So that has been the problem, is that lack of overarching framework, and the City Manager's point out, it's very difficult for staff to know precisely what direction would be relevant from time to time, and what the consequences would be of any of these. But if the idea is simply to signal to staff our desire to see the best possible service for customers in Vancouver during this period, then I think that does that, and I'm not sure that it imposes too much burden on staff because they did it last year. So.
Thank you, Councillor Meggs. Just to add my words before we move to the last speaker, which is Councillor DiGenova, the mover of the motion, that I also believe that staff were under the impression that we would be able to continue on with this, but being clearer is, of course, important. So in that vein, to be clearer, I think, Mr. City Manager, you had probably taken it under consideration and advisement that look at the environment throughout the year, and as time progresses and clarity becomes more available, hopefully through provincial action, as Councillor Meggs says, by any party, whichever one forms government, that they take some action on this, and hopefully they do, that we would then either need furtherance of this or not at that point in time, well in advance of this last minute situation. This provides, I think, better service for our community overall, with the clarity that there will be more service available and that we are accommodating that on a go-forward basis. Okay. Councillor DiGenova, last words.
Thank you very much. It seems that there is some support for this motion. I understand the situation that we are in, waiting for the provincial decision to come back. And to address Councillor Carr's question, I did actually took address a number of the questions just in my closing. It says to allow for increased taxi service. That doesn't mean that we're making a promise here. It means that we're allowing for that. So if taxi companies do have that capacity, I would assume that that we would be working with the Vancouver Taxi Association as well as other taxi associations. I was not too prescriptive in there because I think staff are excellent at their jobs in how they already handle that, and I'm more than happy to allow staff to make those calls. However, again, just keeping persons with disabilities, people with mobility issues. I know senior citizens, especially during the festive season, use cabs, and I myself use cabs on evenings that I'm out during the festive season. Even if I choose not to drink alcohol that evening, parking is exceptionally hard as well. So even for those who choose not to drink or do not drink alcohol, I think that having this service out there, it's not just helping one group of individuals, it's helping all groups of individuals, and it could also alleviate issues of parking as well. So I thank you very much for entertaining this motion today, and I hope I will have your support.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to voting. Voting. We have a unanimous vote. The motion passes. Thank you. And we will go back to questions. Councillor Meggs.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a request to staff arising out of the budget consultations that are now ongoing. And they arise really from the fentanyl crisis. I know that Councillor Jang has some follow-up comments he wants to make in regard to this, but although staff did a really outstanding job preparing for a lot of eventualities in this budget, my concern is that we had a record number of overdoses last week. We're on track to, hopefully we're not on track to get to 700 deaths this year, but we're well over 600 already in the province of BC. And I just think that this loss of life, plus the terrible impact on our city's first responders and a lot of the people providing frontline services, is really off the charts. So while it was included in the budget development considerations, I think it's fair to say that we just don't know and can't really be certain whether this crisis has peaked or whether it will continue to worsen. And this has, in my mind at least, poses some real problems for anticipating or providing the flexibility in the budget to anticipate challenges that we can't even really define at this stage, although we have a general idea what they might be like. I know this is a concern of Mayor Robertson's, who's off on civic business today and couldn't be here. But I'd like to ask the city manager to work with staff to prepare an additional budget option over and above what's in the current draft that could be available for the city, with obviously with reports back to council on what the allocation would be to respond to certain aspects of this crisis. And in particular, my question and concern is, do we have sufficient capacity in wake of the events that have unfolded since the budget discussion began to support city staff, both first responders who've been dealing with this for months already. So it's about resources on the street as well as support, what I would call workplace support, whether it's counseling or overtime or time off. That's a whole set of areas which staff would have to advise council on. But I just would like to be sure that we have that flexibility, although at this stage we're hoping that the crisis recedes. Another area would be cleanup, and there's a lot of resources already proposed for cleanup, but the number of needles being distributed by Coastal Health is really off the charts for reasons we can understand, but it poses real concerns for members of the public in all kinds of areas of the public space. Do we have sufficient options in there, flexibility to increase shelter capacity if that proved desirable? So I just don't want to go forward and complete the budget process without giving council in the coming months and staff the flexibility to respond to some of these. And I know when Councillor Jang has his turn here, he has some other aspects of this that he'd like to highlight. So I just wanted to do this very transparently and ask the city manager to bring council that advice so that we can incorporate that before our December 7th session in our considerations.
May I respond?
Yes.
Firstly, thanks. As you know, Councillor Meggs, there's of the 3.4% increase on the tax, probably 1% of that is responding to what we're dealing with on the street at this point. So it is not just the fentanyl crisis, but homelessness and poverty, mental health and addictions, all of those together are creating major strains on our first responders certainly, and on the community more generally. So happy to look at additional investments that could be made to deal with even what's changed in the last few weeks, because as you've indicated, it just seems to be escalating almost on a daily basis, and the impact on our staff is significant. Question to you in response to that request: Are you envisioning this comes to council in a memo in advance of the speakers on the 7th, or would you like it presented on the 7th? Because I think we have a special meeting on the 7th in advance of the vote on the 13th. So some information of kind of what you're hoping for on timing would help me to see what I can land.
I think that where the staff believes that there are reasonably anticipated demands that could occur, we'd like to know what those are, and I've indicated some areas, and whichever time you can do it, but I would like the public to be aware this is available for council's consideration too. So I think if it's possible before the 7th, and okay. I think procedurally, just to be clear, my assumption is, knowing, as you say, that there's significant investments there already, that there would be a subsequent plan developed by staff and subsequent decisions by council if there was a need to resort to this money. So it might impact the size of the tax increase, but the actual allocation of it would await for future events. That's what I'm trying to say. In other words, what is there? When staff goes deeper into it, it's too short a time in my judgment, but you may feel differently, to say, well, we'd really like to add this, this, and this. What I'm trying to do is anticipate unanticipated demands and have that flexibility. So there might be a future report from staff, or several, depending on what events unfold, but there would be some kind of identified resources in the budget.
Okay, that's helpful. So let me think about kind of sequencing of what we can gather and when. There are, to your last point, there are some things that even over the last week have become abundantly clear are needed. And those, if you were to consider this, we would recommend moving on them immediately rather than further conversations with council. And there might be some that might be longer term. So we'd come up with some options for council.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Next, we have Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Acting Mayor. And actually, I just want to also thank Councillor Meigs for raising this issue. I know that I've raised it before at council, but I have a great deal of fear and trepidation around the burden that the increased and accelerating fentanyl crisis is having on our first responders, especially our firefighters. And I know that our mayor did do a ride-along at Fire Hall 2 this past week, and I can also say that he has spoken about how important and urgent this issue is. So thank you, Mr. City Manager, for pursuing this. I wanted to rise on a number of points, activities going on. First of all, just to say thank you to all the tens of thousands, well, the media said 5,000. I think it was over 10,000 people that attended the Kinder Morgan rally on November 20th. That was a walk from here at City Hall down to Library Square. It was quite inspiring set of speakers, and I just wanted to affirm in this public way how important this issue is, and the city's actions to encourage people to write still to the Prime Minister and to cabinet ministers as they are in the process of considering the Kinder Morgan pipeline expansion project, and that decision may well be imminent. So encouraging people to get their letters, their emails, and phone calls in our Not Worth the Risk website at vancouver.ca as an avenue for them to do that. Secondly, just wanted to say there were a couple of very heartwarming and exciting events of the last bit. One of them was the Raycam Community Center 40th anniversary celebration. And it was unbelievably inspiring to be there and hear the stories of people for whom that community center is their living room, and the program support that is being offered to them. We've heard those speakers here at council, but I just want to congratulate Ray Cam on its 40th anniversary. Third, the East Side Crawl. I'm sure Councillor Deal is going to talk about this, but because I know she loves this event, but it's an unbelievably inspiring event to be with the artists and artisans in the east side of Vancouver, and I know I get Christmas shopping done there. I'm sure a lot of people do. And finally, just to let people know that we are undergoing a character home review process in the city, and we are hosting meetings for public consultation. And the first meeting at the Hellenic Community Center, I believe staff informed me, there was over 500 people that attended. It was an incredibly robust consultation. There are 2 more events that are open houses on this issue, and these are for people who are concerned about living in a part of the city where the character homes are coming down. They may have a home there, they may just be concerned about character homes, but many people are coming who have homes in those areas and want to know what the potential changes are. So those meetings are Monday, December 5th from 5 to 8 at the PNE Hastings Room, and Tuesday, December 6th from 5 to 8 at the Hellenic Center, and I really encourage people to come out for those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jang.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And to the city manager, I think I would request a memo specifically on steps we can take with regard to managing the ongoing overdose crisis in our city that I don't think really have been contemplated yet as part of the budget process. And what I'm asking for, I think is really important. We've had 622 deaths. I just understand from my healthcare colleagues at University of BC, we've had our first carfentanil death now, and that's fairly significant. So things are happening on our street very quickly. With Mayor Robertson, I know he's been to some of the shelters. They are not a very pleasant place to be, some of the shelters right now, given the amount of overdoses and mayhem going on in there. I've been working with my colleagues at UBC, Vancouver Coastal Health, our first responders, and BC Centers for Disease Control on a number of different types of approaches we can take. So as part of the memo back prior to December 7th, I would like some very specific ideas that our staff have with their costings on things we can do to support, for example, some of our frontline workers. I've heard, everything from, again, a new mobile medic van might be required, new staffing for shelters, so people can rotate off and actually get some time off to recover. Post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms are starting to set in amongst all first responders. I would also like any costings on any type of opportunities we have to partner with, leveraging opportunities with our partners in health. We've had some very successful partnerships, with, for example, more recently on the mental health hub, but other opportunities that aren't actually contemplated as part of the budget, and have this all prior so that the public can see that we're dealing, what the cost of helping deal with this crisis is, and how we have to leverage and work with our partners. We can't do it alone. We need everyone to pull in the same direction. In my career, over 25 years now at UBC working in this area, this is the worst crisis I've ever seen in my life. When I go out into the street, whether I go into the shelters, where I go, I have never seen anything so bad in my life, and I can't underscore that enough. Many of my colleagues are absolutely exhausted. I'm exhausted just working on different parts of it, assisting where possible, working with our partners to try to get the moving pieces together, all pulling in the same direction is absolutely exhausting, and people continue to die. The 622 is only the numbers up until about September or so. We still have a few months of reporting, so I suspect those numbers will be higher. And with carfentanil now being on the street, and we've registered our first death around November 17th, I suspect those numbers will go higher. We need a very different approach. I know our partners are working on a different approach to it, and we need to be there to support them. And it will cost us some money, is my anticipation. And I think we should be there is because, unless we all pull together in the same direction, we're never going to beat this crisis. I suspect it's going to get worse for a very long time. And we have to be ready for that. So I would really like to see that in the memo highlighted very clearly. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager?
Thanks. Firstly, thanks for that. And I should have mentioned that we are planning a fentanyl overdose crisis town hall meeting here on December 8th in Council. So that information will be getting out to you as well, that we'll be trying to bring some of the core partners working with Vandu on that as well. And as you know, we've sat in a good number of meetings together with residents in the downtown east side and Strathcona and many of the most active organizations that are working on this. So I think we have a good, as I said to Councillor Mays, I think we've got a good sense of what some of those options would be that would help to address some of the pressures that we're dealing with. So I'll get you a memo. We'll try to get that to Council as soon as possible, certainly this week. And we'll look at how that's communicated. So we'll put together a bit of a strategy so that it's clear and transparent to the public what's been asked and what some of those options are that have been presented. Does that?
Yep, thank you. That would be great. And as you mentioned, we have sat in a number of meetings with community groups throughout the city over the last couple of weeks, and certainly got a perspective of what's happening in the neighborhoods. So those cost implications Councillor Meigs had mentioned, for example, everything from additional picking up of needles, all the way through to other forms of ways we can help keep our neighborhoods as manageable as possible would be really key, because it's more than just a health response we need. And I know I've kind of talked about that at length because that's where I work, but the other parts from our community partners, I know they've been crying out for help. And thank you to staff and yourself for actually going out. I know that you're out in Strathcona very recently, going to be walking around on the weekend, looking at parts of the neighborhood, and seeing it from their perspective and their point of view is very, very helpful. So thank you for that.
Just to close out, firstly, thanks for your leadership and knowledge. It's certainly helpful for us as staff. As you said, I did a walkthrough on Saturday with the community residents around Strathcona that have concerns about the proposed supervised injection sites, and we spent the morning walking around, and stacks of needles and many of the issues that you've raised are clearly at top of mind for them. Businesses with concerns about trying to open their doors in the morning and finding stacks of needles there, or feces are the things. So there were a number of very specific requests that they were requesting. But last night I was at a fire hall talking to staff that are impacted, and as I think you've all indicated, it's really putting a major pressure on our staff and having major implications. So I think, as you've said, we'll come up with a list of things and look forward to present them and have a discussion about what additional measures might be invested in. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you. I have two items today. December seems to be the loneliest time of the year, and for many, many people, in spite of all the holiday parties and events. And the arts community really does try to do its bit in having as many different kinds of events throughout the city that actually do make a difference to people's lives. And right now, all those tickets are on sale. And I wanted to mention, in buying tickets ahead of time for these holiday performances, those organizations who are supported in many ways by the city are able to provide free tickets. They're able to provide free tickets for people in the downtown east side and people throughout the city who cannot afford to go to a show. And I remember we used to bus in students who couldn't pay because people had bought tickets and the company could afford to make those tickets available. And person after person would say to me, I'd wish them Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and they'd say, this is my Christmas, this event. So I just wanted to mention that those organizations are out there. They're all through the city working very, very hard. So hopefully people will go out, buy tickets, and then we can make free tickets available to people who need them at this time of year. I also have a motion which I would like to table. The clerk has a copy of it, and I would like to table it. It is seconded by Councillor DiGenova. I'd like to table it until our meeting on December 13th. And I will just introduce it in one sentence, if that is possible. We are a member of an organization. I always have to read the whole name out, the United Cities and Local Governments, which is the UCLG, which is the largest association of local governments in the world. While I was in Europe last time, I was asked by a number of the cities who are involved whether we were participating in their cultural events and programs. So hopefully we'll be able to discuss this at this time, and we'll give council a chance to look at it. And if they have suggestions, I'm more than open to discussing it. So I would just ask permission to be able to move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ball,
And
for that.
if anyone would like a hard copy, I have them here too.
Just in case you're not aware, Councillor Ball, I am a member of the governing body of UCLG.
Yes, I know.
And so happy to have further discussions with you in that regard.
Thank you.
Councillor Deal.
Excuse me. Thanks very much. Certainly Eastside Culture Crawl came up, and I just mentioned a few more things about it. It is, they had over 475 artists this year in 78 buildings. And I think I usually get there in the evenings, and one of my favorite things is to stand under a street light with other people all comparing maps and deciding where we're going next. And I also know that they have some of the most unusual gifts that you can find there. I had some people over for dinner on Sunday, and one of them brought me a gift from the crawl, and it was a sock monkey pate knife. So there you go. You can get anything at the Eastside Culture Crawl. I also thought it would be nice to mention another seasonal event that's taking place. As a choral singer, I love this one. It's a fairly new one. It started last year. It's called the Yule Duel, and it's in Gastown along Water Street. And dozens of choirs joined hands and compete in singing seasonal songs. And the money that's raised goes to May's Place this year. So I'll be a judge this year. My choir did not enter, so I'm eligible to be a judge, and I encourage people to come down on December the 1st in the evening to hear competing choirs raising money for a great cause. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Deal. Councillor Reimer. Oh. Councillor Reimer.
Thanks. I had an inquiry for staff and then some events I wanted to make council aware of. The inquiry was in relation to councillors who are representing council as a liaison, either to a neighborhood, a committee, or other activity that council has appointed them to get some written direction from staff as to the nature of that representation. And I bring it up because it's come to light that some councillors may have been representing a partisan interest in their liaison capacity, and I felt like it might be good to clarify that early on in the neighborhood councillor liaison process.
Okay,
Mr. City Manager.
That sounds like a good idea. I mean, we're all treading new territory here to some degree with the neighborhood liaisons, so we did provide a memo on some of the framing around that from our understanding of the program, and we're happy to get you additional memo to outline how to manage that balance. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
In terms of events, I've had a few. The volunteer recognition event was last night for the volunteer corps, and I know Councillor Deal was able to come and provide welcoming remarks. The city manager was there, I think, stuck it out to the very end. Lots of volunteers to recognize. We now have over 1,200 volunteers in the volunteer corps, a really impressive number, and staff deserve. There's a lot of staff there who are there, some in their staff capacity, but many just because they want to connect with this big body of residents that, sorry, I made the residents sound large individually, this large group of residents that are doing really incredible and diverse things for our emergency response and preparedness. I also was this past week at the Public Policy Forum Awards where a few people were awarded, but I wanted to specifically note Mary Ellen Turpel-Lafont. It was quite something after her decade in office as the representative for children in the province to be able to, this was her last official public event. Quite emotional, as you can imagine. She assures me that she's on to something new that will be announced in the new year, so that's really exciting to see, but it was really amazing to see such a high-profile body give her that kind of recognition for the service that she's given to children and youth in the province and families. Strathcona had their neighborhood small grants. I know Councillor Carr reported on the general concept, but to say the Strathcona ones tend to be a different flavor than the other ones. They have everything from needle exchange and World Hepatitis C Day they had one that was the Balmoral totems that they were recording and making sure that the community got more active. And it just had a very different flavor to it than the other small grants that I've been to, so I wanted to note it. And if you have a chance to connect with Roberta, who does the coordination for that, it's really worthwhile. Also wanted to note the Safeway site, the owners have initiated the external public consultation. It hasn't yet come to the city, but they are holding events. They had one a couple weeks ago at Federico's Supper Club, which was a unusual and inspiring place to think about the future of one's community, very festive atmosphere. There's also an event coming up next week in the evening that's a bit about honoring Bing Tom, a lot about honoring Bing Tom, who was the architect that the proponent had, the owner of the site had engaged for the sort of first vision. So there'll be some discussion about that, as well as just general reflections on commercial and Broadway as a gateway, a potential sort of globally significant crossroads potential that Bing Tom saw for the area. So I would invite people to come to that, as well as just, I know it's a very significant area in our city, the Broadway and commercial site where the Safeway is. So didn't want people to be surprised to hear that discussion has started in some earnest on the ground level in Granby Woodland.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Councillor Meigs. Hang on.
Since Council took a position in support of YVR's concerns about the possible privatization of YVR or its asset recycling fate that Mr. Craig Richmond reported to us, there was some subsequent events that were very quick in succession. The infrastructure bank was announced and confirmed by the federal government, and consultants retained by the federal government have been visiting YVR to determine if it's suitable for asset recycling. At the same time, Richmond Council and Metro Vancouver have been brought up to speed on this, and so I expect we'll hear more about this in the coming year. We also had the opportunity to meet on the weekend with Unifor, the union, which has probably got the largest number of unionized workers at the airport. There's about 22,600 workers at YVR, so it's undoubtedly one of the largest job centers in the province. And they're very anxious to participate in this discussion too, and we're pleased to hear that this council had taken the stand it had. So I think we can safely predict we'll be hearing more on this front in the coming year, because both ports and airports are now being vetted for this asset recycling concept.
Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After my motion, I had a few other things that I just wanted to mention, and those include some events that I happened to attend, as it's my month as a duty councillor, so I attended as acting deputy mayor. One of the events was the 7th.
You attend as the council representative.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just following suit. I know that a number of councillors have mentioned that was the title. So
the title is council representative, because Councillor Deal is the acting mayor. As the deputy mayor, I'm the acting mayor. The mayor, of course, and you would be the council representative.
Oh, I thought I was acting for the deputy mayor. Sorry.
No.
Sorry about that. It's a little confusing. We have so many mayors. So I'll get on to the events here. Well, I know that people have asked me which mayor they should talk to. So here are the events that I've attended. The 70th anniversary of the Polish Combatants Association. And I would hope that other councillors would indulge me with a little bit of silence for the veterans who served and truly did fight for the freedoms that we enjoy here today. And a number of those veterans were honored at the ceremony. I know that there are 21 chapters worldwide, and we are very fortunate to have a branch here on Kingsway, so I attended that event, the celebration of their 70th anniversary here, and it offers camaraderie and a way for a number of individuals, many of whom are senior citizens, to meet with others who have shared similar experiences, especially immigrants in our community. So I wanted to note that. I also attended the Commercial Drives Christmas lighting, which was a fantastic event that is always sponsored by the Business Improvement Association for Commercial Drive. Fun, free family event. There was music, there was a tree lighting, and Santa was even there to take pictures. And then I also wanted to mention the UDI Awards of Excellence, which I also attended. And I just wanted to let Council know that a number of Vancouver projects that have come before us won awards. They won awards in sustainability, they won awards for their architectural design, and in a number of different categories, including heritage. And there were applications from across Metro Vancouver, so I wanted to report that as well. And I hope that you'll have a chance to look on the UDI website at those projects. We can be very proud of having those projects, and many of them won awards, I understand, worldwide, and those are posted on the UDI website. Also mentioning that the Life Achievement Award this year was presented to Nat Boza for his contributions to the development community. So just wanted to mention that here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll provide a brief update in regards to my activities this past couple of weeks in between council. Just further to Councillor Meg's comments in regards to YVR, I think it's important to note some activities that both Councillor Stevenson and I undertook as your council representatives at the FCM. We had the opportunity to meet with a number of MPs and ministers, parliamentary secretaries during that time, and I'll give you a sense of that. But specific to YVR, Councillor Stevenson had the opportunity to ask our Finance Minister, Bill Marneau, his position on where that privatization of our YVR airport was at, and the response was that it was a preliminary paper. No actions have been taken, but certainly there was a study that was undertaken and started by the last government, and he's in receipt of that, but no decisions have been made. But I think it's good to note, Councillor Stevenson, thank you for asking that question of our Finance Minister and trying to gain that clarity for all of us, given our concerns about the movement to privatization of our airport and the possible increased costs to the consumers of that service within the area. I did, as I said, meet with a number of different MPs while I was there. Finance Minister Morneau had a good conversation with our Housing Minister, Minister Duclos, Minister Sohi, again, on infrastructure in general. Parliamentary Secretary Adam Vaughan was quite helpful. He's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister in regards to our conversations regarding housing in general, and these are types of the conversations that I had, but it wasn't just the ministers and parliamentary secretaries, of course. It extended to the opposition parties, whether it be Interim Leader Ambrose or Denis Lebel from the Conservative Party, and leadership hopeful Lisa Raitt, along with NDP leader Thomas Mulcair, Elizabeth May, locally, Jenny Kwan, Jonathan Wilkinson, Pamela Scose-Jones, Diane Watts, the former mayor of Surrey. These are some of the conversations. All to say that we've had extensive conversations with a number of federal government representatives advancing the proposition that we need their support as they formulate policies and funding structures in the upcoming budget. These are positive, and I think fruitful conversations that we've been having so far. We will see in the budget, of course, how fruitful they are to us as local government, but given some of the comments around the table in recent council meetings where it appears that there seems to be some anxiety about us not having enough conversations, I wanted to highlight to you the breadth and scope of the number of conversations that I personally have had during my time in Ottawa last week, and I know that Councillor Stevenson had a number of them himself, but this is not exclusive, of course, just to the two of us. This was replicated by over 100 different meetings, 150 some odd meetings that we had with a number of MPs all across the Hill, and advancing the priorities of local government. So that's my update from the FCM. Thank you. That is the business of the day. We will move in camera at, let's say, in about 10 minutes, let's say, 15? 12:15. You want some time? 12:15 then. We'll convene in camera at 12:15. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.